Hi, it's Carol Salter here, back after the Christmas break. I hope you had, if not an exciting outgoing one, at least a good, safe, happy Christmas. And for the youngsters among you, got what you wanted for Christmas. This is my first podcast since then, and in the new year now I'd like to give you a little bit of my background in writing, and I'm going to start by reading some of my anthology pieces today. So I began writing, and if any of you amongst us are writers, you'll know, when I was quite young, about 11, I started writing poetry and wrote poetry right the way through till I was 35. And then I decided to write a novel. And it happened while I was sitting watching my son play, and I was reading a very famous novel in the science fiction world by Anne McCaffrey, and I thought, why am I sitting here reading it? I could be writing something instead. And that's when I started writing novels. My first novel I was over the moon about. I sent to 4 publishers. They weren't interested. It broke my heart, thinking I was the best thing since proverbial sliced bread. And so I didn't write for a while. Then I picked up my pen a while back when a friend of mine, Jackie Emery, decided to put an anthology together in aid of charity. Her and I were both seroptimists at the time, and you can Google that. I was a seroptimist for 10 years. Since then, Jackie Emery has sadly passed away. She was a great loss to this world, because she did projects like this and was huge in fundraising and was such a beautiful person. I'm going to read today my first ever publication, which is a poem in Voices in Verse, which I don't believe is in print, but you could contact Seroptimist International and ask, and let you see what my first bit of writing was like. It's a poem called The Imperfect Patient, and as a nurse for 46 years, being on the receiving end was quite a shock. So I wrote about it in about my late 30s, I believe. Imperfect Impatient. Every sound you hear throughout the day is listened to a sharper way, for it marks the time and measures them, the hours that you have to spend. Endless pacing of many feet, the patient's stroll, the nurse's beat, forever nearing loud and quick, the clock of life, the tock, the tick. Trolleys that forever rumble, carrying drugs and tea ensemble. You lie in bed in early morn, enjoying moments before the dawn, peace and comfort semi-still, whilst outside rain drums on the sill. The pain is strong, but it's okay, as long as you're out of sister's way. 6:30, not up yet? We've your bed to make, so out you get. Not allowed back till way past 1. Gee, this nursing life is fun. Outside you hear everything that's passed by the nurses that titter about the patient last. It's a whole new world in a strange, feared light, a traumatic way to gain insight. A bit less sharper, a softer tone would be an improvement, an essence to hone. A little less hardness on out you get. Some genuine care. Yes, that's great, pet. Not thinking of money and nights out there. Leave your home life behind you with the ones you care. Less talking so loudly for all to know when we are weak and feeling low. Instead, why not talk to us, smile with us, share? We're not just your earnings, we're people, we're there. And looking back on that now, it seems a bit harsh. I was talking about my own colleagues, well, not personal colleagues, but colleagues in the nursing profession. And it was interesting because I felt we had a great deal of care and love and attention, and it wasn't till I became a patient I realised I could have done more. we could have done more. So I learned a lot, not only from writing the poem, but from being a patient. And I don't want to be another one. I don't suppose I'll have a choice one day. I realise with hindsight and COVID that that poem might upset a few people, because the NHS have been absolutely marvellous in all this. I know colleagues that have been pulled in from the community and from managerial roles to work on wards. So I would like to point out this was written a long time ago, and I don't by any means believe the NHS aren't doing everything they possibly can. So that's the first thing I ever published in 2009 as part of an anthology. And it sort of gave me the bug to start writing properly again. And the next thing I wrote in was this anthology, which was produced by a group that came out of a website community called Litopia. And my colleagues and I, for this venture, I merely submitted a piece and they published Broken Worlds. So I'm now going to read from my second piece I had published called Underworld. This is available on Amazon for Kindle readers, and I think it's at the huge amount of 99 pence, or 79 pence it might be actually. So this is a dystopian short story, and I think rather than explain it, I'm just going to read it. Underworld. They call to each other. Their voices fill the air with animal growls and grunts. I shiver, remembering the last time. They'd found me bleeding but empty, confused. I can't let them find me again. I don't have the energy to defeat them a second time. My shoulder aches and my head still throbs where I fell down through the tree. Head down, arms pumping like a world-class sprinter, throat on fire, gulping acrid air, I race barefoot across the gravel. Ignoring the sharp stones cutting into the soles of my feet, I cross the derelict open space, heading towards the remains of an ancient housing estate. I reach the nearest wall and follow the decaying brickwork to its end. Turning the corner, I find a large terraced area where eons past scented flowers grew. I stop to rest, licking my cracked lips with a dry tongue. There's no saliva left to moisten them or ease my burning throat. I cough. Even that sounds hoarse and dry, no phlegm to shift. The bricks move behind me. Centuries-old mortar crumbles into sand, dusting the ground and my clothes. I move away. The houses aren't homes, just shells infested with weeds and rats, nothing left where people lived and loved. Behind me, the barks change to baying, louder now in the empty wasteland. The hounds have either followed my scent or... I glance down at the blood on my feet. I need to hide and fast. I can't climb back into the safety of open sky. I scan the area for an escape, somewhere black. The hounds are afraid of places where demons dwell. They might hesitate, call off the hunt. I might not remember who I am, but I know this world, its denizens, both good and evil. A flight of steps built into the terrace leads enticingly up into the darkness. I race towards it, flying up the steps two at a time. Catching my right big toe on the topmost edge, I sprawl head first. I spread my hands wide to lessen the impact. Gravel digs into my hands and knees. Friction burns my chin. But there's my salvation. Past a pile of building rubble, a long concrete slope leads down into the bowels of the earth. It looks like an underground car park. I pray I'm right. Maybe the unthinkable, a working machine. Anything's better than staying exposed in the light. My pursuers aren't visible, but growling noises are close behind the house walls. I half limp down the wide slope into the darkness. My toe is throbbing, and the embedded grit stings in the cuts on my knees and palms. Where the slope levels out, I stop and listen. The ramp is bathed in sunlight. Sunlight I might have enjoyed in earlier days when the world still turned. There's no safety in the light anymore. It's always daylight on the surface now, dry and bright. The second dwarf sun climbs higher into the bleached white cloudless sky. I step over the threshold and move from daylight into shadow. Facing the dark, I give my eyes a moment to adjust before moving on. I breathe out, relaxing my tired shoulder muscles, easing the tension in my broken right wing. I've never heard of hounds following anyone into the dark. I take a moment to survey my chosen place of refuge. I can make out tall grey square shapes. No smell of oil or diesel, no rusting metal box in neat rows, no painted lines on the ground. Not a car park. I mouth a swear word, afraid to speak aloud. 2 wide corridors disappear into the black, one on either side. At intervals are small rooms with high arched doors like hungry mouths. One closed door stands opposite me. At the top of the slope, metal scrapes against concrete. Thinking the hunters have found me despite their terror of dark places, my breath catches, my arms splay wide in childish reflex. They haven't found me. Instead, a massive concealed shutter emerges from a metal plate in the floor. I missed it. How could I miss that? I watch it rise to the ceiling, blocking the only exit. The sunlight contracts to a thin slither of white fire, then it's gone. The hounds will have to find another way in, if they're prepared to follow. My stomach churns, threatening to dislodge the remains of my meal, while my pulse thunders in my ears. It isn't a question of hiding anymore. I need to find another way out. Each route looks identical. I take a step forward. Something tingles on my skin, like a spider walking over my face. An instinct. I am not alone. So I'm going to stop it there. That's not all the story. You can either wait till my next podcast to hear the other half, or of course you could go on Kindle and download it for yourself. Meanwhile, before I finish today, I would like to repeat my offer for writers and creatives, that if you would like to have an interview with me and have it turned into a podcast, or if you would like to say something about your work and send it to me for a podcast, I'd be very happy to do that. Oh, and my son would be very happy to do that. Also, if you have a book launch online and you've recorded it via Zoom, you can send that to me for editing, and we'd be happy to put that as a podcast. But there might be a small fee for that, because all of our things take up recording time and computer space. So until next time, stay safe everybody. I'll see you then. Goodbye.